Welcome to this session of Through the Bible Women's Bible Study. This session we're looking at Genesis 26. We've been introduced to Jacob, but we are going back to the story of Isaac. Now Isaac lived the longest of any of the patriarchs, 180 years old, 5 years more than Abraham. Yet there's less recorded about him than any other patriarch. This chapter is the only chapter devoted exclusively to his life. We could call this chapter, "Oh well." Verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. Those names sound familiar? Again, Abimelech is probably a title more than a name. So just as in Abram's day, there was a famine. So Isaac starts going south toward Egypt, just like Abraham. But he doesn't go all the way. He doesn't leave the promised land. Gerar is on the coast. It will be inhabited by the Philistines, but right now it's their predecessors. The Philistines came from islands in the Aegean Sea near Greece. They tried to invade Egypt, but Egypt was just too strong. So they settled in the southwestern coast of Palestine. It's the same place where Isaac's father Abraham met another Abimelech and did the wife's sister thing that he shouldn't have done. Abimelech means my father is king. So not the same Abimelech here. Verses 2 through 5, and the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For to you and your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars in heaven, and I will give your offspring all these lands. And in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." So it's possible Isaac is planning to go to Egypt, but God intercedes. And again, Egypt is a great place to go during a drought. They have the river Nile, which never dries up. So there's always water available. But God doesn't want him to leave the promised land. Now, God never told Abraham, he didn't intercede with Abraham, but he's telling Isaac. Isaac is always to live in the land of the promise. If he stays where God wants him, God will bless him. God had originally made a covenant with Abraham, but he's continuing this covenant with Isaac and his chosen descendants. This fulfilled a specific promise made in Genesis 17:18. So this is a formal repetition of this agreement with 3 essential aspects that were first communicated to Abraham and now include the following promises: a land, a nation, a blessing. Ultimately, this blessing will be in Jesus. He's continuing this covenant because of Abraham's obedience. We know that he wasn't always completely obedient, yet God recognized his heart. This was because Abraham was declared righteous by faith. The great news is, when you surrender to Christ, you're righteous by faith. God rewards obedience. One of the rewards seems to be how our faith affects our family. Verse 6 through 8. So Isaac settled in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." Oh my gosh. For he feared to say my wife, thinking lest the men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out the window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. Same story, different person. Isaac is obeying by staying in the land. Gerar is still in Israel, but it's populated by the Philistines. So don't you just hate it when your kids pick up your bad habits? He learned this from Dad. But it's been between 70 and 97 years since Abraham had done this. But he is repeating the sin of his father. He's saying his sister was his wife was his sister, but this one's a complete lie because she is not his sister in any way. She's a cousin. Both times, father and son, they did it because they feared for their life. Remember though, Rebecca, when it said she was attractive, when we saw that in the last chapter, she is beyond attractive. She is gorgeous, beautiful. It says they'd been there a long time. And one night, Abimelech looks out and he sees Isaac and Rebecca playing hoochie coochie. The King James Version makes it clear that Isaac was sporting with Rebecca. So it was more than just laughing. Verses 9 through 11. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife. How then could you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought lest I die because of her." Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touches this man or his wife surely shall be put to death." Happens again. A pagan king rebukes the man of God. It's really sad when a Philistine comes across more moral and ethically sensitive than a patriarch. And apparently Abimelech didn't have relations with Rebecca, and neither did any of his people, so there were no complimentary gifts. Now, you would think they would have heard of this family. Dad did the same thing, same deception. You would think they would be put on the blacklist and you don't come visit us ever again. Don't, your sons, grandsons, you leave us alone. Notice God didn't intercede by appearing to Abimelech like he had with Abraham. Maybe the twins were already born, so there would be no question of who their father was. But again, Hebrew chronology, they don't necessarily write stories in order. Even though he doesn't intercede, he was in control. Even as God protected his father, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca were also protected. Verse 12 through 14. And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Pastoral nomads usually did small-scale farming so that they would have feed for their animals. So Isaac works the land, he plants crops. The famine must be over. And then it talks about how he's becoming wealthy. Now, he would have started off wealthy because he inherited a fortune from his father, but he earns more through his own hard work. That wealth, the neighbors are looking and they don't like it. It's another consequence of living so close to the Philistines. Verses 15 through 17. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. So Abraham's gone, and the Philistines, or the people that were living there at the time, they had a pact with Abraham, but no more. Wells are precious in the desert. They were difficult and expensive to dig. It's a serious case of sabotage to fill in a well. It's an act of war. These particular wells were dug in the days of Abraham. Even though Isaac was wronged, he didn't want a battle. He was completely in the right, but he didn't assert his rights. He was confident God would take care of him. In our world today, it seems like so many lives are focused on what their rights are. You don't see God talking about our rights. We need to trust him to take care of us. Now Isaac leaves, but he doesn't go very far. Verses 18 through 19, and Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, so he goes back and digs the same wells. It took a lot of faith, took a lot of work, a lot of commitment to re-dig these wells. For nomadic herdsmen, water was life. During the dry season, the only way to survive was the water from the wells. These wells were not a luxury. They were a necessity. Naming a well gave you ownership rights. By naming them the same as his father, Isaac was shooting at making his ownership incontestable. Isaac's servants found something that Abraham didn't. The best kind of well, one with running water. Running water was fresher and cooler. So let me pick up in verse 19 again and go through verse 23. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." From there he went up to Beersheba. So there's this well war going on. The Philistine herdsmen claim that this well with the spring water is theirs, even though Isaac named these wells the same name his father had. After this, he renames it. The first one he renames contention. So they dig another well, and the same thing happens. This time Isaac names it opposition. The third well, there's no argument. So he names it plenty of room, or roominess. So kind of strange. He finally has a well. Then he takes off. Did he sense God wanted him at Beersheba? Beersheba is the first place Abraham had gone with Isaac after they came down from the sacrifice on Mount Moriah in chapter 22. There's something special about Beersheba. 24 and 25. And the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake." So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. God appeared to Abraham a few times. This seems to be the first time he's appearing to Isaac. Isaac had been facing a lot of conflict, but he had refused to participate in it. But God lets him know, I've got your back. I will protect you. God kept his covenant with Isaac for Abraham's sake. In the same way, God keeps his covenant with us for Jesus' sake, not because of our worthiness. Isaac walked in the same paths of his father Abraham. He lived a life with altars and tents, just as his father did. These places became places of worship, prayer, and sacrifice. Verse 26 through 31. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzah, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, Why have you come to me, seeing you hate me and you have sent me away from you? They said, We see plainly that the Lord has been with you. So he said, Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. And Isaac sent them away on their way, and they departed from him in peace. So here is Isaac, apparently in Beersheba. Don't know for sure because of this chronological thing. So he's out, and Abimelech shows up with his advisor and with his general. His general is named the same thing as the earlier Abimelech, so Phicol appears to be a title too. So Isaac asks a logical question. Why are you here? You pushed me out of Gerar. Your herdsmen continually took my wells. He had every reason to think they hated him. Isaac doesn't expect this response. Abimelech saw how God had been with Isaac and how God had been blessing him. He came out to ask for peace and a blessing from Isaac. Remember, they were afraid of Isaac because his army was so much bigger than theirs. And Isaac is held back. Now you might think that Isaac was a coward for just walking away from all those wells, and that maybe he was a wimp. But look what he ended up with. Peace. Isaac has been a great witness of how a believer should act. He didn't respond to evil with more evil. He sought God's provision. So after a feast marking the covenant of peace, Abimelech left. You have to wonder if they did this covenant thing with the cutting the animal in half and taking a stroll through together. Who knows? Doesn't say. Verses 32 and 33. That same day, Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug and said to him, We have found water. He called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. So even though we've been hearing Beersheba, it didn't have that name until this point. Beersheba means the well of seven. The number 7 was a sign of agreement. Numbers in Hebrew are very important. They're very symbolic. This means agreement. Isaac calls it Sheba, which means agreement. Abraham was a man of altars. Jacob would be a man of tents. Isaac was a man of wells, and he knew God's constant provision. He knew by experience God would provide in so many different ways, not just one. Verse 34 and 35. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. So back to the kids. Esau goes against the pattern, and he marries the local girls. He's showing he doesn't care about family traditions. He doesn't care about covenant obligations. He is supposed to be he is the firstborn son. He's supposed to be the heir. we're seeing why God chose Jacob from the beginning. Isaac avoided arguments, but Esau chose wives that are causing constant trouble. They are making Rebekah and Isaac's lives miserable. So next session, we are going to pick up with more of the story of Isaac and Jacob and Esau. Please click like if you've enjoyed this session. Consider subscribing so you'll be notified of future sessions. Thank you for joining.